Hello everyone, welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. I'm focusing in on a section of my 125 gallon mixed reef tank, a section that's just not doing too well. These wonderful Palythoa Grandis are bleaching. That is why they're that opalescent white color in its own deathly way. I suppose that's beautiful, but it's a sure marker for a dying coral, and it's what's happening on our reefs around the world on a macro level, but in the reef tank it happens too. The zooxanthella, those are the cellular organisms held within all corals to create the color morphs that you see, like this here. That's zooxanthella creating a fluorescent green, and then the purples and pinks and so on. And then here, this was a olive green with a brown center and a white tip, and now you can see the hints of the brown still in there. These corals will still feed, and I'm going to feed them later with some heavily condensed powder, reef powder, that reefroids actually, to be precise, and I will literally deposit them into the polyps with these motors turned off, and they will feed. Unfortunately, that might prolong their life, but I doubt it will bring them back because from what I've read, zooxanthella are derived or created, manufactured, or a combination of that sort of alchemy from light. And ironically, it could be light that is hurting them, as it does in our oceans around the world, too much sun and high temperatures. What I actually think, and by the way, it's not just those Grandis, but look at back there too. That's about a $500 colony, and all of them are corrupt. And honestly, if it's happening to this specific coral and nothing else, and even over here, you see them there, same phenomenon. That tells me a couple things: that it's a specific problem, obviously, to that coral and not these other corals, which are doing marvelous. And frankly, the success of these other corals is what I think is the root cause of the problem being faced by these corals, especially with these leather corals. That's this toadstool here, the long polyp toadstool there, the other ones there. These are all babies from these mother colonies, 1, 2, and 3. I have fragged them. Let me just show you an example of that. In the back here, this is how I frag them. A chopstick crazy glued to a piece of rock, and literally take a chunk of coral here, you see where I made a cut a while ago, and push it down through the chopstick, and over time you get these growths. But I digress. I think corals, these leather corals, are notorious for being fairly aggressive in how they compete with other corals, in that they will release toxins into the water column to create space for themselves. And it's most toxic to corals that are not within their species range. So one leather against another leather against another leather. This is a cabbage leather here, even though it's a different morph. Less likely to be problematic, but Palythoa is a whole different species, and that is my theory, because the fish tank otherwise is doing really well. I mean, it's a little dirty right now. I'm going to clean it tomorrow, but the water gets changed every week. The parameters get tested. The temperature's solid. Now, there were some fluctuations in July and August, and the problem did start around then. So that's theory number 2, that high temperatures, just like in the oceans around the world, created a problem and a bleaching event with these corals. What do you think? It's devastating, but you know, in a reef tank, corals are a bit like orchids. You might get 6 months, you might get a year and a half, and then they just perish. Some hardier leather corals, like what I have here, that is not the case, and they will stay with you for a long period of time. But unless you're a super duper professional, corals do have a beginning and a middle and an end in a reef tank, and I'm thinking I'm at the beginning of the end of those Palythoa. As always, everyone, keep your hands in the tank. Ciao for now.